Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 98, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Monday, March 20th, 2023. Hope y'all had a great weekend. Weather was okay. It was a little rainy on Saturday morning, especially a little overcast, but Sunday was a little bit warmer, and overall not too bad. Whether you were inside or outside, I hope you had a good time this weekend. Nothing too exciting to report in my world. Just been watching the NCAA Tournament, which has been awesome. There's been some crazy upsets. On the men's side, a 16 seed beat a number 1 seed, only the second time in history that has ever happened. So that was exciting to see. There's been some other upsets, including Kansas, last year's champion, being knocked out. So lots of fun stuff going on. As of this recording, both of my alma mater, both the men's and women's team from my alma mater, the University of Connecticut, are still alive. The men's team is playing tonight. When I record this, I'm recording this on Sunday, so hopefully they are very much still alive. I love this time of year. Just really enjoy the tournament, especially when my school's in it, and it's a good time. We'll talk a little bit more about that because unfortunately for some South Carolina schools, tournament is not going so well. Of course, the South Carolina women's team rolled in their first game. They are also playing, as I'm recording this, or playing on Sunday. I would imagine they probably won and won handily. It'd be a shocker if they lost. So I will assume that they're still very much alive. But outside of them, on the men's side, South Carolina not faring so well in the tournament, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Outside of that, just wanted to share, I said periodically I'll let you know what I'm watching or reading or whatever, which may or may not have Charleston ties, just because, I don't know, it's nice to be able to talk about something not Charleston related. And, with all these shows and things out there, maybe this will, get people watching some shows that I like too. I talked about The Last of Us, finished that up, was awesome. Even if I told you previously, even if you were tired of the zombie genre or like, oh, I watched The Walking Dead, it's totally different. Obviously, there's going to be some similarities, but I think they did an amazing job. It was only like 8 episodes or so it's not like a super long commitment for that first season, which is already wrapped. So really enjoyed that. On the other side, more of a comedic show, although it does have plenty of gut punch moments. A new show called Shrinking, which is on Apple TV. That is from Bill Lawrence, who created my favorite show of all time, Scrubs, which started, I think, very late 90s and into the mid 2000s. And what I always loved about the show is goofy. It was funny. But it also, like I said, had those gut punch moments that you didn't expect from a comedy. You're like, oh, wait, this show is making me laugh, and it's so goofy and silly. But they did a good job building characters. And also, like I said, all of a sudden there's these really serious moments that you don't see coming that really kind of knock you on your butt, and they earned it. It wasn't like out of nowhere. Even though you weren't expecting it, they still earned those moments. So that's why it's my favorite show of all time. But he's created a bunch of other amazing shows. Spin City before that, which admittedly I didn't really watch too much, but a lot of people seem to say was really good. Cougar Town. He's involved with Ted Lasso, and now he's involved in this show, Shrinking, starring Jason Segel, who you might remember from all the way back, of course, in the early days with Freaks and Geeks. And then has gone on to be in a bunch of other movies from Judd Apatow. Forgetting Sarah Marshall's a big one, of course. But he's one of the stars. Jessica Williams, who used to be on The Daily Show, is also in it, as well as, of course, Harrison Ford, the biggest name. You can't go wrong with that. But a good show. It's similar in that Bill Lawrence style, where there's a lot of comedic moments, and they're pretty darn funny. But there are some serious, surprising turns that really do hit you in your heart. And it's been a really enjoyable show. I think 5-6 episodes in or something like that. I might be wrapping this weekend, actually, but in any event, I recommend it. It's been a good show, so be sure to check that out if you're looking for a new program to start. All right, let's move on. Let's get into the news. So there is a proposal for Charleston County schools, this new policy that opponents say would harm LGBTQ students. So these opponents of the new proposal, which would ban Charleston County educators from talking with students about sexual orientation or gender, say that doing so would violate federal laws prohibiting discrimination. They also say that it sends a hurtful message to the LGBTQ community which already experiences higher rates of depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. So this new policy comes from school board member Ed Kelly, who represents the Mount Pleasant area. The proposal was first introduced back on March 13th. So, in addition to banning most conversations about sexual orientation or gender, the policy would also block teachers from asking students for their pronouns or sharing their own. It would also require employees to use the gender documented on their employment paperwork, even if it doesn't correspond with their identity. According to Kelly, who is the chairman of the board's policy committee, said the goal is to limit discussions about the pronouns people use, quote, simply from a distraction standpoint, end quote, which is, of course, bullshit. It has nothing to do with being a distraction. Over the years, I have spoke to teachers about the pronoun thing, including family members who are teachers, and it really isn't that big of a distraction. Of course, I'm sure someone can pluck a story somewhere where there is some child who is making a mockery of this, probably because their parents do, and is just trying to be silly and trying to change their pronouns every week or something ridiculous that kids would do. But by and large, putting those small instances aside, this isn't a distraction. It's not a big deal and doesn't have to be. A teacher can ask students their preferred pronouns secretly, not secretly, but not in front of the whole class if they don't want to. They could have them fill out paperwork or whatever, make a note of it in whatever they use for attendance or whatnot, their classroom roster, and just go with what the student requests. End of it. That's it. It's not a big deal. And what's the big deal with a teacher saying, hi, I'm Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so or Ms. or whatever they prefer as far as that's concerned, which, by the way, no one gives a crap about. If someone's like, oh, I prefer Ms. or I prefer Mr. or I don't want to be called Mr. or Mrs. or anything, like no one cares about that, of course. But this will be a distraction. They could easily just be like, my pronouns are this and this. What's the big deal? It doesn't have to be a discussion about it. It is what it is. Kids are pretty fine with this stuff by and large. They're just like, okay, an adult told me that their name is this and they prefer to be called this. Easy peasy. It's usually the adults that have a problem with this stuff, not the kids. But anyway, it has nothing to do with it being a distraction. We all know that. That's just something they're trying to claim. So their bigotry doesn't come out, of course, or at least they think they're hiding their bigotry. Oh, no, this is just a distraction thing. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's not a distraction to ask a kid, hey, for me, for instance, okay, first day of class, teacher's taking attendance, Christian Sanger here. Do you prefer to go by Chris or something else? Nope, Christian. Okay, cool, thanks. End of story. Not a distraction. And if I had said, yeah, I prefer to go by Chris, or oh, no, I actually go by my middle name, which is what, you know what I mean? Like that stuff happened when we're kids. Not a distraction at all. This would be no different. All right, so although Ed Kelly was the one that presented this, the draft actually originated with 5 members of the school board whose recent election campaigns, no surprise here, were all backed by Moms for Liberty, which is this fast-growing conservative group that advocates for what they call parental rights in schools. Those parental rights tend to circle around, and this was born out of the pandemic, parental rights to not have your kid wear a mask if you don't want them to. That's where this all kind of started. And then it kind of dovetailed during the protests in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd, when parents were upset that things about race were being discussed in schools. And so then it became, well, my kid doesn't need to hear about race in schools. And then they made these ridiculous claims that teachers were trying to tell white students they should feel bad about the past or whatever. It now is expanded to anything involving LGBTQ content in schools as well. So that's what, when they're saying parental rights, it's basically like if parents don't like something, it should be their right to not have their kid learn about it. That's basically what they are. And those are like their 3 big tenets, was the mass, CRT, and LGBTQ. In any event, under current policy, if a student asks an educator about those topics, staff are expected to conduct themselves in a way that a spokesperson said contributes to an appropriate learning environment. The spokesperson also said that student staff requests to use pronouns that don't match their gender identity that they are assigned at birth are handled on a case-by-case basis. So basically, the spokesperson was like, hey, we're already kind of dealing with this stuff. There really hasn't been an issue, and saying the whole case by case basis probably is alluding to the fact that, yeah, maybe there are some troublemaker kids who are just trying to be silly and say their pronouns are something that it really aren't. Because again, they're just kids that sometimes they do silly things and they think they're being funny and they're not. That's probably what that means. They determine if this student is serious or this educator is serious, and that's it. Doesn't seem like it's a big deal at all. I haven't heard any issues in classrooms. Now, granted, I don't have children, let alone children in a specific school district. But from friends who have kids and on the internet where you see every complaint about everything, I haven't run into any concerns as far as concerns based on anything that's actually happened. You see a lot of people projecting or saying what they're worried about, but not actually providing any examples of these things happening. So it seems like school's doing just fine with this whole thing. Back to Kelly, he said that he does not want to prohibit students from talking about their gender identity in all circumstances. So, to his credit, he did say that. He wasn't saying this, oh, no, I, making it seem like he cares about the children, but then he kind of gives the game away when he explains his point. He said, this is his quote: I don't want to make it against policy to have a conversation with a student who comes to a teacher and says, hey, I'm suffering from mental, psychological problems. I believe I might be the opposite gender and I want some help. End quote. I shouldn't have to say this, but being transgender is not a mental health condition. That's not just me saying that. Medical professionals say that. You are not having any kind of mental issue simply because you're transgender. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your brain. That is so like I said, he gave the game away. Just when you're like, "Oh, okay. Although I don't love this proposal, at least he's saying he doesn't want to like prohibit students because students who are trans or members of the LGBT community in any scope are often, statistics show, are in more danger, whether from harming themselves or being harmed, than their straight cisgender counterparts. And so, okay, it seems good. He's going to let these. Oh no, there'll be processes for kids who want to discuss these things. Again, still don't really love the whole thing, but at least he's saying he wants them to talk about it because he clearly believes that this is a mental or psychological problem to be trans or to be gay. It's unreal, the bigotry in this stuff. And I understand these topics make people uncomfortable, and that's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable with things you don't understand, or especially certain ages, certain generations, when things were put in your head from adults for years and years and years. That stuff gets ingrained in you, and you start to think, oh, well, my parents or my grandparents or whoever, they they made me feel this way about a certain group of people, and that can be hard to deprogram that. I get that. But it's clear when they say stuff like that they're not even attempting to understand. When you're saying, oh, well, no, students can still talk about it because thinking that you're trans is a psychological disorder that can be fixed. That shows that you are either willfully ignorant, you're not looking into this at all, you don't know any trans people, you haven't talked to any doctors, you don't get it, or you already know that the consensus, that the proof from the medical profession is this is not a mental health issue, but you don't care because your personal beliefs are that they do. So he gives it away there. So what little grace I was going to give him is gone after reading that whole thing. Now, I did mention that, yes, members of the LGBTQ community, especially children, are more likely to have mental health issues, but it's not, the mental health issue isn't their gender identity or sexual orientation. The higher risk of things like depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation is a result of the hostility and harassment that these groups of people experience. Half of LGBTQ youth in South Carolina and nearly 60% of transgender and non-binary youth, seriously considered suicide in the past year. This according to survey data from the Trevor Project, which was published in December. 1 in 5 trans and non-binary youth in South Carolina attempted suicide, not just thought about it, attempted it. And nearly 90% of LGBTQ youth in the state said recent politics have negatively impacted their well-being either sometimes or a lot. This is the group of people who always talk about protecting the kids. We got to protect kids. We got to help the kids. Won't someone think of the children? And but what they're using that as an excuse again for their own bigotry and bias towards a group of people. When you have literal youth in crisis and they're telling you they are and why they are, and you ignore that to try to pass these policies and laws, you don't care. You honestly do not care. Or at least you don't care about these children. You care about the imaginary straight cisgender children that are somehow harmed by learning about LGBTQ people existing. It's really, really frustrating. If you really care about protecting the youth, you wouldn't be implementing these things. You wouldn't be trying to pass these things. You would be providing them with resources to feel more included and to make the school more inclusive and welcoming to people of all backgrounds. Straight, not straight, white, black, doesn't matter. Whatever the person's background is, you should be making it inclusive and welcoming and safe for them at school. And this is the opposite of that for a very specific group of children. Courtney Waters, who is a board member representing North Charleston, said she didn't see how respecting someone's gender identity was distracting. Brandon Fish, the director of community relations for the Charleston Jewish Federation, said the debate over the policy itself is a distraction. He said CCSD has a lot of issues to deal with, and we really don't have time to deal with culture war issues. He's 100% right. That's all this is. It's a culture war issue. It's only going to further harm kids. And that's what it is. And no matter how they try to sugarcoat it, it's about a distraction. Oh, I still want kids to be able to talk about it because it's a mental health issue. No. You don't care about children. Don't pretend you do. It's not a distraction. It doesn't have to be. It can be a real easy and simple process. And these people elected to the boards that were backed by Moms for Liberty, they don't have any real policy ideas outside of those three things I mentioned: mass, CRT, LGBTQ. Once they do get these policies either approved or dismissed, what are they going to do now? They're not going to have anything else to talk about or run on. This is the only reason they ran for these positions. Anyway, let's close it out with some NCAA tournament talk. Unfortunately, the College of Charleston's fun season did come to an end. They lost on Thursday night by a score of 57-63. That was against the San Diego Aztecs. Great season by the College of Charleston, and they were in this game and looked like they may even take control of it at one point. But unfortunately, they were ousted in the first round of the NCAA tournament. But great season for them. And you know what? South Carolina got some good news despite CFC losing. And by the way, I think the same night, Clemson lost in the first round of the NIT tournament, which is kind of like the backup tournament. If you don't make the main one, the main NCAA tournament, they have the NIT tournament, which gives some schools that were kind of on the cusp a chance to play some postseason basketball. And they were a number one seed in that tournament. They were ousted. So rough time for South Carolina schools, but Furman out of Greenville did provide some excitement. They got into the NCAA tournament and pulled off a huge upset. They won 68-67 on Thursday against Virginia. That game was in Orlando, where the College of Charleston's game was as well. Virginia was a 4 seed, which is pretty amazing because Furman was only a 13 seed. Big upset for the Paladins. And it was fun to see. It was also very dramatic. They stole an inbounds pass when they were trailing by 2. All that Virginia had to do was really inbound it, make some free throws when they were fouled, if they were. But Furman steals it, buries a 3 to go up by 1, and then a last-second 3-point attempt by Virginia didn't go through. So really exciting moment for Furman, and just if you're a college basketball fan, unless you're a Virginia fan, so I'm sorry if you are. But it was really fun. Unfortunately, the celebration didn't last much longer as they ended up losing to San Diego State, the same team that beat College of Charleston. What the heck, San Diego State? Man, just doing South Carolina dirty in this tournament. This game, unfortunately, was not very close. 75-52 was the final. That second round game was also played in Orlando on Saturday this time. So sad to see Furman ousted, but really cool that they got that moment to win. Also very sad College of Charleston didn't win a tournament game, but an incredible season and something to build on, going forward. Hope you all have a great start to your week. Hope you're enjoying the tournament if you are watching. If you have a school that is good at basketball, I hope they're still alive and you're, enjoying rooting them on. I will see you all again on Wednesday. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins for producing each and every episode, and thank you to Tyler Boone for the music you hear in each and every episode as well. If you want to support the podcast, please like, review, subscribe. All that good stuff helps out. You can also go to holycitycenter.com/shop, pick up some merchandise, or go to patreon.com/holycitycenter. And as I said, I will be speaking to you all again on Wednesday. Can't wait for it. Until then, good night and good luck.